Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into fascinating topics, extract the most compelling insights, and surface with knowledge that makes you truly well-informed.
Great to be here.
Today we're tackling one of history's most enduring and, well, monumental mysteries, Stonehenge.
Ah, yes, Stonehenge. Always captivating.
And we're not just talking about its imposing sarsens, those huge stones everyone pictures. We're focusing specifically on those smaller, blue-hued megaliths, the Bluestones.
That's right. And what's truly fascinating, almost unbelievable really, about these Bluestones is their journey.
Isn't it just over 200 kilometers, all the way from Wales, somehow ending up on Salisbury Plain?
It's an incredible distance. And for decades, there's been this core debate, a real argument about how they actually got there.
Two main camps, right?
Exactly. Were they carried by powerful glaciers during a prehistoric ice advance, essentially, hitching a ride on the ice?
Glacial erratic theory.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Or were they painstakingly transported by the ingenious efforts of Neolithic people, pulled, pushed, dragged over vast distances?
Human ingenuity versus natural forces. It's a classic scientific puzzle, and both sides have had strong proponents over the years.
Definitely. Passions run high on this one.
And right at the heart of this, well, this centuries-old archaeological debate is a single, pretty unassuming piece of rock, the Newall Boulder.
Ah, the Newall Boulder.
Just a discrete, hand-sized fragment dug up way back in 1924. But it's become this critical test case for both hypotheses.
It really has. It's like the linchpin, the piece everyone pointed to.
Each side believed it supported their case.
For years, yes. Proponents of both the glacial theory and the human transport theory saw it as crucial evidence.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the very latest scientific findings. We're going to correct some long-standing factual errors in the historical record.
It's really important here.
And ultimately reveal how this little boulder, believe it or not, has finally clarified a monumental mystery for you. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good. So the Newall Boulder, as it's known, it was initially recovered by Lieutenant Colonel Hawley during excavations at Stonehenge back in 1924.
Okay.
And a gentleman named R.S. Newall, who was assisting on the dig, collected 18 stones, this particular boulder being one of them.
Right.
Now, Newall himself, he initially thought it was a glacial erratic. He believed ice had brought it.
So the glacial idea got in early.
It did, and that view was quite influential in the early stages of the debate, shaping the discussion for a while.
But here's where the story gets really interesting, doesn't it? Because recent research has completely overturned some long-held beliefs about this very boulder's past.
Absolutely. For a long time, there was this misconception, this idea floating around that the Newall Boulder was just sort of stored out of sight and out of mind, forgotten.
Yeah, I've heard that version.
Yeah.
But that's just not true, is it?
Not at all. The boulder was, in fact, studied meticulously, multiple times over the decades, by various different institutions.
Really? Like who?
Well, it was examined by the Institute of Geological Sciences in the 1970s, then by an Open University team in the 1980s, again in the early 1990s, and most recently from 2022 onwards by Professor Bevins and his colleagues.
So far from forgotten.
Exactly. Its journey through different labs, different sample numbers, it's all been documented. It proves it was anything but ignored. And the key insight here really is that its consistent reexamination only strengthens the reliability of the latest findings. Multiple eyes, different techniques, all converging.
That makes sense. So this little rock has had quite the journey after it was dug up, too. It's got a complicated advent history.
It does, with pieces and thin sections ending up in different museums and surveys. Salisbury Museum, the British Geological Survey, Museum Wales. It took some detective work just to track it all.
But the real breakthrough comes when scientists use these cutting-edge tools to reveal its deepest secrets. What did they actually see when they finally put it under the modern microscope, so to speak?
Well, they used a method called petrographic examination, essentially looking at thin slices of the rock under a powerful microscope.
Okay.
And this revealed the boulder's unique identity. What they found was a truly distinctive microscopic pattern, a specific combination of minerals and structures.
Like a fingerprint.
Exactly, like a geological fingerprint. And this fingerprint matched precisely, perfectly, with rhyolites. That's a type of volcanic rock from a specific place called Craig Rossi Phelan in North Pembrokeshire, Wales.
Crag-Rosy-Phelan. Okay, I've heard that name come up before in relation to Stonehenge.
Yes, it's one of the key quarry sites identified.
And we're talking about a really specific signature here, not just generally rhyolite.
Oh, absolutely specific. Things like tiny grains of chlorite and titanite lying along a strong foliation, which is like a layering in the rock. Then these fascinating needle-like still nulling crystals, often forming these radiating clusters.
Well, okay.
And slightly flattened microtonalite class little inclusions within the rock. The crucial point, and this is really key, is that this combination of features all seen together.
Yes.
It's utterly unique to Crag-Rosy-Phelan. Despite examining hundreds of samples from elsewhere in North Pembrokeshire, this specific petrological fingerprint has not been seen anywhere else.
So a definitive match, like a geological DNA test.
Precisely. And to further solidify this, they use something called automated semi-DS false color images.
Right, advanced imaging.
Exactly. These map out the minerals in detail. And these images showed textures that were, well, indistinguishable, and mineralogies that were perfectly comparable between samples taken directly from Crag-Rosy-Phelan and the bluestone chippings the debitage found at Stonehenge itself.
More strong evidence for a common source. It's really building up.
It is. But they didn't stop there.
Okay.
Beyond the visual fingerprints, they also delved into the chemical makeup using portable X-ray fluorescence, or PXRF. It's a non-destructive way to analyze the chemistry.
Right. You can take the kit right to the stone.
You can. And what they discovered was that the Newall Boulder and other Stonehenge foliated rhyolite debitage samples consistently plotted within the exact chemical composition field of those Crag-Rosy-Phelan rhyolites.
Like a chemical GPS confirming the source location.
You could put it that way, yeah. It's another layer of certainty.
Was there anything unusual, though? Any chemical quirks?
There was one interesting anomaly, actually, which proponents of the glacial theory had previously tried to leverage.
Oh, what was that?
A slightly higher calcium concentration in the Newall Boulder compared to the quarry samples.
Ah, so maybe it wasn't from Crag-Rosy-Phelan after all.
Well, that was the argument. But the research clarified this beautifully. It turns out this higher calcium isn't an indication of a different source rock at all.
No. So what caused it?
It's due to the natural precipitation of something called pedogenic carbonate coatings. Think of it like a thin mineral crust, sort of like tufa, forming on its surface over time.
Formed where?
Formed after it arrived at Stonehenge. During the millennia, it's been buried in the chalky soil there. The calcium carbonate essentially precipitates out of the soil water onto the rock surface.
Ah, so it's an addition after transportation.
Exactly. They even estimated the growth rate maybe around 1 millimeter per 1,000 years, which fits perfectly with how long the boulder would have been buried at Stonehenge. It makes complete sense.
That's a brilliant distinction. It removes that piece of counter evidence.
It does. And there's another powerful geochemical indicator. The zirconium to thorium ratio, ZrT.
Okay, what about that?
For Crag-Rosy-Phelan rhyolites, this ratio is consistently around 20. And guess what? The Newall Boulder and the other Stonehenge rhyolite debitage match that.
And other potential sources.
Many other rhyolites in North Pembrokeshire have a much higher ZrT ratio, often greater than 40. So it clearly differentiates the Crag-Rosy-Phelan source and the Stonehenge samples from the others, another specific chemical marker.
It feels like they've really nailed the source scientifically.
Well, this new data absolutely builds upon and corroborates previous geochemical work from 2011, 2012, 2017. Those studies use even more sophisticated techniques.
Like what?
Things like laser ablation, ICP-MS, which analyzes tiny spots on the rock, and UPAMB zircon dating, which precisely dates the formation of zircon crystals within the rock. All of these previous independent studies also consistently pointed to Crag-Rosy-Phelan.
So multiple lines of evidence, multiple studies, all pointing the same way.
Overwhelmingly so. The source is Crag-Rosy-Phelan.
Okay, so with the source now firmly identified as Crag-Rosy-Phelan in Wales, the next step was figuring out how this hand-sized boulder related to the larger monument. What's the connection?
The interpretation, based on its discovery context and type, is that the Newall Boulder is actually a piece of rhyolite debitage, a fragment, a chipping derived from a broken-up monolith that once stood at Stonehenge.
A piece of one of the bigger bluestones.
Exactly. And the most likely candidate for its parent stone, if you like, is the buried stump of a stone designated Stone 32nd.
Stone 32nd. Okay, but I sense there's a complication here.
Oh, yes. This brings us to what we could perhaps call the great misidentification in Stonehenge's records, a long-standing error that muddied the waters for decades.
What happened?
For years, there's been confusion surrounding Stone 32nd and its immediate neighbors, 32C and 32E. They're all stumps buried in the ground.
Right.
Back in 1954, the famous archaeologist Richard Atkinson, during his excavations, actually misidentified Stone 32nd. He labeled it as spotted dolerite, which is another type of bluestone found at Stonehenge, but a different one.
Okay.
And confusingly, he identified its neighbor, Stone 32E, as rhyolite. So he got them mixed up.
He swapped them.
Effectively, yes. And this mistake, unfortunately, was then repeated in later very influential publications about Stonehenge. It became accepted fact.
But how do we know it was a mistake?
Because recent, really detailed examination of the original excavation photographs, stunning images held by Historic England, clearly shows the texture and structure of Stone 32nd. And it is, without doubt, a foliated rhyolite. It looks identical in appearance to the rock found right there at Craig Rossi Phelan. You can see the characteristic layering.
So the photos prove Atkinson wrong.
They do. And conversely, the photos show Stone 32E is actually a spotted dolerite. Stone 32C, the third one, was correctly identified back then as volcanic ash, or andesite group A.
Wow. So correcting these historical records is absolutely critical for understanding the monument properly.
It really is. It shows how vital it is to continually re-examine old data, even excavation photos, using modern knowledge and, frankly, a fresh pair of eyes. It tidies up the picture considerably. Stone 32nd, the parent of the Newall Boulder, is Craig Rossi Phelan rhyolite.
Okay, so the boulder is a fragment of Stone 32nd, which came from Craig Rossi Phelan. This all points very strongly towards human transport, doesn't it? But what about the glacial arguments? This all seems to debunk them.
Well, it certainly challenges them very strongly. But let's address the arguments head-on. If the Bluestones were transported by glaciers, as some still argue, there's a fundamental question. Where's the glacial evidence on Salisbury Plain itself?
Right. The boulder's source is Wales, but maybe ice did carry it. Some proponents used the boulder's shape, didn't they?
They did. They tried to argue that the Newall Boulder's shape and surface features things they described perhaps as a bullet shape or braided surfaces, suggested it was a glacial erratic, a rock carried and dumped by a glacier.
I mentioned striations, scratches from being dragged under ice.
Claims were made about faint striations, yes. But is there really any solid evidence for that on the boulder?
What's the verdict?
The boulder is definitively not striated. There are no convincing glacial scratches on it. While some proponents admit any claimed features are faint, it's crucial to stress that most of the features cited like its so-called bullet shape. Any facets or abraded surfaces can be entirely explained by natural weathering and fracture patterns.
Patterns seen where?
Seen right there at the source, Craig Rossi Phelan. That geological site naturally breaks down and forms elongated, somewhat bullet-shaped columns due to its jointing patterns. The shape isn't evidence of glacial transport, it's evidence of its origin.
Okay, so the boulder itself doesn't scream glacier. What about the wider landscape? If massive glaciers hauled these stones over 200 kilometers, shouldn't there be a clear glacial footprint on Salisbury Plain?
You would absolutely expect that. Thick ice sheets moving across land leave behind very distinct features.
And do we find them?
The answer, after really extensive research by experienced geologists and archaeologists, is a resounding no.
No evidence at all.
None. Extensive field surveys across Salisbury Plain, including detailed investigations in military training areas where the ground is often disturbed and examined. They have found no glacial erratics. Those are rocks carried from afar and dropped by glaciers. No moraines, the mounds of rock and sediment left behind by melting glaciers. No drumlins, no eskers, no other diagnostic glacial features whatsoever. The landscape just doesn't show signs of having been overridden by a large ice sheet reaching that far south.
That seems pretty conclusive.
It's very strong negative evidence. Furthermore, think about the bluestone fragments actually found at Stonehenge.
The debitage, the chippings.
Exactly. They're almost exclusively angular chippings. They're sharp-edged. They are not the rounded, smooth cobbles you'd expect if they'd been tumbled around under a glacier or washed out in meltwater streams.
Good point. They look like they were worked by people.
Precisely. And significantly, these fragments are confined almost entirely to the immediate vicinity of the monument itself. They haven't been found scattered randomly across the plain, as you might expect if a glacier had dumped a load of bluestone debris. This strongly implies human activity shaping the stones on site and the debris staying close by.
What about arguments citing erratics found elsewhere, say down in Somerset or Devon? Don't they prove glaciers reached the region?
That's a different geological story. Those erratics, often found near coastal areas, are generally attributed to different processes, most likely iceberg rafting during periods when sea levels were different and icebergs floated down the Bristol Channel or Irish Sea.
So icebergs dropping rocks, not a massive land-based glacier grinding its way to Salisbury Plain.
Correct. It's not evidence for terrestrial subglacial transport ice moving over land-carrying boulders all the way to the specific inland location of Stonehenge. And it's also worth noting some older ice sheet models that perhaps suggested glaciers might have reached that far south
Yes.
are now considered outdated or misleading. Newer, more accurate climate and glacial models simply do not support such an extensive ice sheet reaching across Salisbury Plain during the relevant periods. The direct geological evidence on the plain itself just isn't there.
So the landscape evidence, the nature of the fragments, the modern modeling, it all points away from glaciers.
It really does, which brings us back strongly to the human story.
Right. Let's tackle another argument sometimes used against human transport, the idea of the sheer variety of bluestone types.
Yeah.
Some said there were too many different kinds for people to have selectively chosen them, implying it must have been a random glacial dump.
Yes, that argument has been around. But what's fascinating here is that detailed modern examination of literally thousands of lithics, the stone fragments from Stonehenge, has shown something quite different.
Which is?
It's revealed a surprisingly restricted assemblage. We're talking about only maybe 12 to 15 different distinct rock types among the bluestones, not the 40 plus, sometimes even 46, claimed by some older studies.
So far fewer types than previously thought.
Significantly fewer. And this limited range strongly implies deliberate human selection. People were specifically targeting certain types of rock, probably for their properties or maybe their symbolism, rather than just scooping up a random jumble left by a glacier.
Why the discrepancy in numbers then? Why did earlier researchers think there was so many more types?
It seems largely due to confusion in older geological literature and terminology. For example, using different names like gritstone and quartzite almost interchangeably for what we now know is the same sandstone, or using vague terms like felsites or hornstone for what are actually different specific types of rhyolites.
Ah, so modern petrology has just tidied up the classification.
Exactly, it's refined the picture. Our Neolithic ancestors were clearly very particular about their stone choices, not just picking up any old rock lying around.
And we have evidence they were actually quarrying these specific stones.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial evidence. At the source sites themselves, like Craig Rossi Phelan and another key site called Carngo Dog,
Yes.
researchers have found undeniable evidence of Neolithic quarrying. Stone tools, for instance, hammerstones, stone wedges used for splitting the rock. Some were even found in situ, wedged into the joints of rock pillars, exactly where you'd expect them to be left during the quarrying process.
Wow, caught in the act almost.
Almost. There are also artificial platforms built up against the rock faces, clear niches or scallops in the rock where monoliths were extracted, and even evidence of a trackway leading away from the quarry face at Craig Rossi Phelan.
This is compelling stuff. Direct archaeological evidence of stone extraction.
It is. And what's more, the dating fits perfectly.
How so?
Radiocarbon dates from charcoal and quarrying layers, and OSL optically stimulated luminescence dates on sediments. They place the main quarrying activity at these sites around 3400 to 2900 BCE.
And Stonehenge's bluestone phase.
The first erection of bluestones at Stonehenge is dated pretty firmly to around 3000 to 2900 BCE. The timelines align beautifully. They were quarrying the stones just before or right as they were needed at Stonehenge.
It all slots together.
It really does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sheer scale of Neolithic achievements, the human transport of the bluestones fits right in. It wasn't necessarily an outlier feat.
You mean compared to other things they were doing?
Exactly. Just think about the sarsens at Stonehenge itself. Sourced from the Marlborough Downs about 24 kilometers away. Some of those weigh up to 40 tons.
40 tons. That's what, 6 or 7 large elephants?
Something like that. A huge undertaking already, requiring immense organization and effort. And then there's the altar stone at Stonehenge.
Yes, the one lying flat in the middle.
That one likely came from much, much further afield. Current thinking points towards northeast Scotland.
Scotland. That's over 750 kilometers away.
An incredible distance. An absolutely immense undertaking. It's humbling to think about, isn't it? thousands of years ago. No wheels for transport like this, no modern machinery.
Makes my last furniture move look like child's play.
Doesn't it just?
Why?
And we see other examples across Neolithic Europe of this kind of long-distance megalith transport. The Devil's Arrows in Yorkshire, the Rudston Monolith also in Yorkshire, the enormous Grand Menhir Brisé in Brittany, France, the huge curbstones at Newgrange in Ireland.
So moving massive stones over tens, sometimes hundreds of kilometers was something Neolithic people did.
They demonstrably did. They likely used technologies available at the time, strong ropes, probably made from plant fibers or leather, wooden sledges or rollers perhaps, maybe lubricated trackways. We know they were capable builders and engineers.
What about the landscape itself? Wouldn't dense forests have made overland transport incredibly difficult?
That's a common question, but we need to remember that by 3000 BCE, Neolithic farmers had already been clearing woodland across Britain for over 1,000 years to create fields and pastures. It wasn't wall-to-wall primeval forests.
Okay, so the landscape was more open than we might imagine.
Likely much more managed in places. And well-established trackways and routes would have existed. There's evidence of dense Neolithic activity settlements, flint scatters along plausible routes. Interestingly, the most likely overland route from West Wales towards Salisbury Plain naturally follows interconnecting river valleys, much like the modern A40 road does today.
And it wasn't all impossibly steep hills.
Actually, the analysis shows surprisingly modest inclines along much of that natural corridor. Difficult, yes, but not impossible by any means for organized groups of people.
So the capability was there, the technology was there, the routes were plausible.
And the quarrying evidence is there, and the dating fits.
What really stands out for me here, thinking about it, is that Stonehenge seems exceptional because all its main stones, the sarsens, the bluestones, the altar stone, were brought from significant distances. None are truly local.
That's a very important point, unlike many other stone circles where local rock was primarily used.
Why might that be? Why bring stones from so far away? It must hold a clue to its purpose, surely.
Indeed. It suggests the source of the stones was incredibly important. Perhaps Stonehenge was intended as a grand monument of unification, a place that brought together materials, and by extension, peoples or ancestral connections from different significant parts of the landscape, maybe across Britain.
Bringing symbols from ancestral homelands, perhaps?
Possibly. It's also notable that bluestones, specifically rocks from the Preseli area, were used in other smaller local monuments near the Welsh quarries, like stone settings at Pensarn and Bed I'r Offanc. This suggests the source area itself was already considered special, maybe sacred, or held deep ancestral significance for local communities there.
And wasn't there evidence of earlier stone circles near the quarries?
Yeah.
Kind of proto-Stonehenges.
Yes, exactly. Particularly the site of Wan Mon in the Preseli Hills. Excavations there suggest a large stone circle once stood, potentially dismantled around the time the Bluestones were moved to Stonehenge.
And it shared features with Stonehenge.
Intriguingly, yes. It seems to have had the exact same diameter as Stonehenge's outer ditch, about 110 meters. And like Stonehenge, its entrance seems to have been aligned towards the midsummer solstice sunrise. The suggestion is that maybe some of its stones and its people literally moved to Salisbury Plain.
Wow, potential migration connection.
It's a strong possibility. And more recent research has identified an impressive complex of 4 henges, circular earthwork enclosures at Crosswell, very close to Wan Mon, and surrounded by all the currently known bluestone quarry sources, within just 1 to 4 kilometers.
So the whole area was buzzing with activity.
It seems these stones were part of a much larger, interconnected sacred landscape in Wales. Perhaps the people who built Stonehenge wanted or needed to bring a part of that ancestral power, that significance, all the way to Salisbury Plain.
So let's try and sum this up. What does all this new evidence, particularly from the Newall Boulder, really mean for this monumental mystery?
I think it means the debate is largely settled, based on the current scientific evidence.
In favor of human transport.
Overwhelmingly so. The detailed scientific evidence from the Newall Boulder, its petrography, its geochemistry, combined with the reassessment of the excavation records, the lack of glacial evidence on the plain, and the positive evidence for quarrying in Wales. It all points one way.
The Newall Boulder isn't some random glacial erratic after all.
No. It's a deliberate fragment, chipped from a monolith, stone 32nd, that was meticulously quarried by Neolithic people at Craig Rosy Phelan and then transported over 200 kilometers. It's a tiny piece, but it tells a huge story of their incredible will, their social organization, and their engineering prowess.
It really is a powerful testament, isn't it, to what our Neolithic ancestors were capable of. They didn't just move stones across vast distances, they imbued them with deep meaning, creating these monuments of enduring mystery and connection that still somehow resonate with us today, thousands of years later.
Absolutely. The level of planning, coordination, and shared belief required is just staggering to contemplate.
And as we peel back these layers of scientific inquiry, using ever more precise tools and methods, it reveals not just the how, but maybe hints at the profound why behind these ancient endeavors.
It certainly makes you think.
It does. Which leads us to a final provocative thought for you, our listener. If science can unravel this mystery, what other seemingly inexplicable feats of the past are just waiting to be understood through new scientific lenses? Perhaps revealing a far more sophisticated, interconnected, and capable ancient world than we often imagine.